Welcome back, my late-night listeners, to the crime whisper your window into the secrets lies, and crimes that unfold behind closed doors. Las Vegas, the city of lights, sign, and second chances. Tourists see casinos, flashing neon, and the illusion of endless luck. But beneath the surface, beyond the poker tables and champagne flutes, lies a darker Vegas, a Vegas of debts that can't be repaid, of gangsters still pulling strings, and of lives snuffed out in the blink of an eye when the dice don't roll the right way. Our story begins on a blistering summer night in 2019, when a 34-year-old pit boss named Raymond Ray Delgado vanished after his shift at the Golden Oasis Casino. At first, everyone thought Ray had gone on a bender. Vegas is built on disappearing acts, after all. But when his car was found abandoned on the edge of the desert, with the keys still in the ignition and blood on the steering wheel, the illusion shattered. Detectives would uncover that Ray wasn't just managing tables, he was skimming chips, laundering cartel money, and caught in a web of deceit that stretched from the Strip's penthouse suites to the Mojave's shallow graves. This wasn't just a missing person case, it was the spark that would reveal one of the city's most dangerous criminal networks. The city of illusionless Vegas has always sold itself as a place of dreams, a city where the impossible could happen, where the underdog could walk into a casino with $20 and leave a millionaire. To tourists, it was glittering lights, endless shows, and champagne poured like water. But to those who called it home, the shine often masked something rotten, because Vegas was more than a playground. It was a trap. The city's foundations were laid not by magicians or celebrities, but by gangsters. Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, and a generation of mobsters built the first casinos when the desert was still just sand and scrub brush. In the decades that followed, corporations replaced mob bosses, but the shadows never left. The underworld simply adapted, finding new disguises behind legitimate businesses. For every high roller sipping whiskey at a baccarat table, there was a desperate man behind the scenes, broken by debt, working for cartels, or laundering money through the very casinos tourists thought were symbols of luck. That was the reality Detective Maria Alvarez knew well. Born and raised in North Las Vegas, she had grown up with both sides of the city, her father dealing cards in smoky back rooms, her mother working double shifts in a hotel kitchen. By the time she made detective, Alvarez had no illusions left. She knew the neon lights were camouflaged for what the city truly was, a place where greed turned into violence, and where every bet came with a cost. And in the summer of 2019, when a casino pit boss named Raymond Ray Delgado went missing, Alvarez knew right away. This wasn't just another drunk vanishing into the desert heat. This was Las Vegas showing its teeth. Again, the case began like so many others with a single unanswered phone call. Delgado had finished his shift at the Golden Oasis Casino just past midnight. Security cameras caught him leaving through the back employee entrance, tie loosened, jacket slung over his arm. He was expected home by 2. He never made it by sunrise. His car was found abandoned at the edge of the desert highway, half a mile from a rundown gas station. The keys were still in the ignition. A smear of blood stained the steering wheel, and inside the glove box, detectives found something more troubling than the blood itself. A ledger filled with names, numbers, and coded transactions that didn't look like casino bookkeeping. Vegas had seen thousands of disappearances before: runaways, gamblers skipping debts, tourists who couldn't handle the heat. But this case was different. Delgado wasn't just missing, his vanishing act cracked open a door into a world the city tried desperately to keep hidden. And as Alvarez stood staring at the car in the desert sun, the neon glow of the Strip far behind her, she had no doubt in her mind. This wasn't an accident. This was murder, or something worse. The disappearance of Ray Delgado. Raymond Ray Delgado wasn't the kind of man most people noticed at 34. He looked like half the other pit bosses on the Strip: polished shoes, pressed shirt, smile that seemed genuine until you realized it never reached his eyes. He'd worked his way up from a blackjack dealer to managing an entire pit at the Golden Oasis Casino, one of the smaller but fiercely competitive establishments, a few blocks off the main strip to casino guests. Ray was the model employee. He remembered names, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and had a knack for diffusing tempers when gamblers lost more than they could afford. But those who knew him outside the casino floor understood there was more to Raya. Double Life Ray lived in a modest condo in Henderson, 20 minutes from downtown Vegas. He wasn't married, though neighbors often spotted women coming and going. He drove a leased BMW, wore $1,000 watches, and never seemed short on cash despite the fact that a pit boss's salary couldn't cover half of his luxuries. Where did the extra money come from? That was the question people whispered about. Some said Ray had a gift for gambling himself, playing poker on his nights off and cleaning out amateurs in smoky back rooms. Others swore he was connected to old school mob families still lingering in Vegas's underbelly. A few claimed he had ties to the Sinaloa cartel, funneling their drug money through the Golden Oasis tables. The truth, investigators would later discover, was a mix of all three. Ray Delgado wasn't just a pit boss. He was a middleman, someone who could move dirty money through casinos so clean it came out sparkling on the other end. He took a cut, passed the rest, and kept smiling as though nothing was out of the ordinary. But in Las Vegas, every hustle eventually catches up with you. His final shift night he vanished began like any other. Surveillance footage showed him arriving at the Golden Oasis just before 4 p.m. Greeting security guards and floor managers, he wore his usual navy blue suit, cufflinks glinting under the casino lights according to co-workers. Ray was distracted that evening. He paced more than usual, checked his phone constantly, and slipped outside for smoke breaks, something he rarely did. A cocktail waitress later told detectives that he'd asked her for a double shot of whiskey around 10 p.m., muttering that he had a meeting after this and needed the courage by 12:10 a.m. His shift ended, cameras captured him, clocking out, gathering his jacket, and leaving through the employee entrance at the back of the casino. What happened after that remains a blur. The vanishing point, his BMW, was discovered less than 6 hours later, parked awkwardly on the shoulder of Route 93, half a mile from a gas station that had been closed for years. The desert stretched endlessly around it. No witnesses, no security cameras, just sand and silence inside the car. Detectives found blood smeared on the steering wheel later, confirmed to be Ray's open ledger in the glove box, filled with handwritten notes and coded numbers. Some pages had initials matched to large sums of money. Others had dates circled in red. 2 casino chips from the Golden Oasis, worth $5,000 each. Tucked into the center console, a crushed pack of cigarettes. Even though Ray wasn't known to smoke heavily, but Ray himself was gone. No footprints in the sand, no signs of struggle outside the vehicle. It was as if the desert swallowed him wholly. Theories at first. Police floated the obvious explanations. Maybe Ray had been kidnapped over gambling debts. Maybe he'd staged the scene himself, faking his own disappearance. Or maybe most chillingly, he'd been silenced because he knew too much. Detective Maria Alvarez, however, wasn't buying the simple answers. The ledger alone told her everything she needed to know. Ray wasn't just another casino worker who got unlucky. He was tangled in something bigger, and in Las Vegas, bigger usually meant deadlier. The investigation begins. Detective Maria Alvarez had worked dozens of missing person cases in her career. Most had predictable endings. A gambler who owed the wrong people money, a runaway tourist vanishing into the desert, or someone found drunk and broke 3 states away. But from the moment she stood beside Ray Delgado's abandoned BMW, she knew this case wasn't ordinary. First steps. The blood on the steering wheel was the first red flag. It wasn't a nosebleed or a small cut. Lab results confirmed it came from a deep wound to Ray's hand or head, yet there was no sign of a fight in or around the car that suggested something precise. A forced exit, a staged scene, or someone trying to send a message. Then there was the ledger. Alvarez took one look and saw Patter's initials, and dates that didn't match casino records to anyone else. It might look like shorthand for chip counts or employee schedules, but to Alvarez, who had grown up around hustlers and card rooms, it screamed laundering. The chips in the console were another puzzle piece high value, and left behind in plain sight. No man like Ray would forget $10,000 sitting in his car unless he didn't plan on coming back. Casino connections. The Golden Oasis Casino wasn't one of the Strip's giants like the Bellagio or Caesars. It was catering to middle-class tourists and locals who couldn't afford the glamour of the bigger resorts, but smaller casinos had one advantage. They attracted less oversight, which made them perfect for money laundering. Alvarez knew this well in the 1980s. Mob families had washed millions through slot machines, turning illegal profits into clean casino revenue. That tradition hadn't died, it had simply changed hands, now involving international cartels and organized crime outfits. Her first stop was the Oasis. She walked the casino floor in plain clothes, observing the regulars and dealers. Slot machines clinked, chips stacked, and tourists cheered as though Vegas really was a dreamland. But beneath the surface, Alvarez saw the tension floor managers watching like hawks, dealers scanning for cheats, security guards lingering too close when she asked to review Ray's employment records. The casino's management was polite, but defensive. Mr. Delgado was an excellent employee, they said, repeating the line like a script. We're as shocked as anyone by his disappearance. But Alvarez noticed something. The managers refused to discuss his finances. No one wanted to admit that Ray lived far beyond his means. Friends or enemies. Alvarez tracked down people in Ray's orbit. Co-workers described him as charming but stressed. One said he'd been than usual in the week leading up to his disappearance. Another claimed he had been secretly meeting with a big player after hours, someone who never appeared on guest list. Neighbors said Ray was private. They saw expensive cars parked outside his condo, but never the same ones. Twice old friends painted a different picture. A childhood buddy told Alvarez, Ray always wanted the shortcut. If you had $10, he wanted 100. If you had 100, he wanted 1,000. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to own the table. The more Alvarez dug, the clearer it became. Ray had a double life, balancing loyalty to the casino with side hustles in the shadows. A lead from the past 2 days into the investigation. Alvarez got her first real break. Fingerprint analysis on the ledger revealed partial prints belonging to Luis El Toro Morales, a known lieutenant for the Sinaloa cartel. Morales had been under D-watch for years, suspected of running drug profits through Vegas casinos. If Ray's ledger had Morales prints, it meant one thing: Ray wasn't freelancing. He was working directly with the cartel, and if the cartel thought he'd betrayed them, his disappearance wasn't a mystery at all. It was a warning. Pressure mounts. By the end of the first week, media outlets had picked up the story. Local headlines screamed, "Casino boss vanishes in desert mystery." Mob ties suspected in disappearance of Golden Oasis. Employee reporters swarmed the police station, asking whether the mob had returned to Vegas, or if cartels were using casinos as cash laundromats. Alvarez gave no comment, but the pressure mounted. City officials wanted answers fast. The casino lobby wanted the story buried, and the cartel, they wanted silence. For Alvarez, it wasn't just about solving the case anymore. It was about surviving long enough to uncover the truth, because if Delgado's disappearance really was cartel business, then every step closer put a target squarely on her back. Secrets behind the casino's detective Maria Alvarez had always known casinos weren't just about entertainment. They were machines designed to take money, churn it, and spit it back out in ways that seemed legitimate. But Ray Delgado's ledger and the cartel fingerprints on it made her see the Oasis in a new light. This wasn't just a missing person case, it was a glimpse into a hidden economy. The old skeleton's Las Vegas had a long history of shadows. In the 1950s and 60s, the mob built its empire on casino profits. skimming millions straight from the count rooms for decades. Bosses in Chicago, Cleveland, and New York siphoned the strip's wealth, while the city pretended it was built on showgirls and Elvis impersonators. The corporations had come in later, buying out mobsters, sanitizing the image, and plastering over the stains, but the skeletons never left. Some retired bosses stayed in town. Some children of mobsters became legitimate businessmen, others simply shifted operations underground, working through proxies and fronts. And now, Alvarez realized, those same old tricks were being revived by a new breed of players, the cartels. The laundering machine casinos were perfect for washing dirty money. Cartel couriers could walk into a casino with duffel bags of cash, buy chips, play small bets at a blackjack table, and cash out later to the books. It looked like gambling winnings to the cartel. It was clean profit. Delgado, with his position as pit boss, was the ideal middleman. He could smooth transactions, adjust records, and ensure the wrong people never asked questions. His ledger wasn't just a notebook, it was proof that the Golden Oasis was quietly functioning as a laundering hub. But if Ray was working with the cartel, why had he disappeared? Alvarez's theory: greed. Maybe Ray had skimmed too much off the top. Maybe he'd made deals behind the cartel's back, or maybe he'd started talking to the wrong people, federal agents, rival gangs, or even the old mob remnants still lurking in the city in Vegas. Betrayal wasn't just dangerous, it was fatal. The mob's ghosts. Alvarez began digging into the Oasis's ownership records on paper. The casino belonged to Sundown Hospitality Group, a company registered in Delaware with no clear parent owner. That was a red flag. Shell companies often shielded real players through contacts in the Nevada Gaming Commission. She discovered whispers about a man named Anthony Tony D. DeFranco, a middle-aged businessman with old ties to the Chicago outfit. Tony D. had lived in Vegas for over 20 years, always skirting the line between legitimate investments and organized crime. Tony's name didn't appear anywhere near Delgado's ledger, but Alvarez's gut told her this. The cartel wasn't running operations alone. They were in bed with old mob hands who knew the city better than anyone. Cracks in the casino. Alvarez interviewed another Oasis employee, a dealer named Nina Marquez, nervous and chains. Nina admitted she'd overheard Ray on the phone a week before his disappearance. He said, "I'll square it with Tony. Just give me a little more time." Nina recalled, "I don't know who Tony was." But Ray sounded desperate, like scared this was it. The cartel wasn't Ray's only problem. He owed something to Tony DeFranco too. He was caught in a squeeze between two predators, and in Las Vegas, there was no way to survive playing both sides. Dangerous whisper. Word of Alvarez's digging spread quickly. Within days, she felt the thighs on her. A black SUV idled too long outside her apartment complex. A man she didn't recognize lingered near her car at the station. An anonymous envelope appeared on her desk one morning, containing only a playing card, the Queen of Spades, with the words, "Know when to fold," scrawled in red ink. The message was clear: stop. But Alvarez wasn't about to fold. If anything, she was more determined, because Delgado's disappearance wasn't just about one man. It was about the ongoing war for Vegas's underworld, a war between the ghosts of the mob and the power of the cartels. And Ray, whether by choice or by mistake, had become the spark that lit the fuse. Detective Maria Alvarez believed every missing person left behind an invisible thread, a web of choices, lies, and secrets. Pull hard enough, and the whole web unraveled. Ray Delgado's web, however, was proving thicker and darker than she imagined. The last sightings: Ray had last been seen on a Tuesday night, leaving the Oasis casino after his shift. Security cameras showed him walking to the parking lot at 2:17 a.m. He looked calm, carrying his usual leather satchel, nodding to a security guard on the way out. From there, the trail went cold. No footage of him leaving the lot, no cameras catching his BMW exiting the garage. It was as if he vanished between the building and his car. Alvarez the tape until her eyes blurred. Then she noticed something subtle, a shadow moving near the far wall of the parking structure. Not a worker, not a guest, someone waiting. The footage quality was poor, but the figure looked tall, broad, wearing a baseball cap low over the face. A detail stood out, the glint of a gold watch on the wrist. Ray wasn't alone that night. Someone was waiting for him. The conflicted guard. The security guard Ray nodded to was Miguel Ortega, a 26-year-old with only 6 months on the job at first. Miguel insisted he saw nothing unusual, but when Alvarez pressed harder, his story cracked. Miguel admitted Ray seemed tense that night. He also admitted that after Ray walked past, 2 men in dark jackets entered the garage. One of them, Miguel swore, had a gold watch. Why didn't you report it? Alvarez asked, her tone sharp. Miguel's eyes dropped to the floor. Because those guys weren't strangers there. Around, everyone knows not to mess with them. If I said something, I'd be next. Alvarez didn't need to ask who those guys were. Mob, cartel, or both. It didn't matter. Ortega had seen the wolves close in on Delgado, and fear had sealed his lips. Friends turned foes. Alvarez shifted focus to Ray's social circle. A name kept coming up: Eddie Fast Hands Russo, a poker hustler and Ray's longtime friend. Eddie was known for his charm at the tables and his knack for surviving impossible debts. Some called him lucky, others said he was protected. Tracked Eddie down at a smoky poker room off Fremont Street. He smiled when she approached, his teeth flashing white under dim lights. Detective, he said smoothly, to what do I owe the pleasure? Eddie denied knowing anything about Ray's disappearance, but Alvarez noticed sweat gathering at his temple, his fingers drumming too fast on the felt when she asked about Tony. Eddie froze, just a fraction too long. Tony's old news. Eddie finally said he's got money tied up in half this city, but Ray? Ray made his own problems. The more Eddie dodged, the more Alvarez was sure Eddie knew more than he was saying. A betrayal exposed 2 nights later. Alvarez got her confirmation. A confidential informant with ties to the Oasis whispered that Eddie Russo had recently introduced Ray to a cartel middleman. Eddie, the hustler, had played matchmaker between Delgado and Morales' crew. It wasn't loyalty, was business. Eddie earned his cut for making introductions. But when Ray started juggling both sides, Eddie quietly stepped back, letting the storm fall on his so-called friend. Alvarez realized Eddie hadn't betrayed Ray directly, he had abandoned him. And in the underworld, abandonment was just as lethal. The digital trail. Forensics dug into Ray's phone records. They revealed dozens of late-night calls to a burner number registered under a fake name. Tracing it led Alvarez to a prepaid phone used near the outskirts of North Las Vegas, close to a warehouse district, long rumored to host cartel stash houses. If Delgado had been meeting people out there, it explained why he vanished. The warehouse district was perfect for making someone disappear. Isolated, industrial, and watched only by coyotes. Alvarez drove out one evening. Parking in the shadows, the warehouses loomed like dark tombs. Silent, except for the hum of distant traffic. She watched as black SUVs came and went. Men stepping out with briefcases, exchanging quick words, then disappearing inside. She knew she shouldn't be there without backup, but curiosity and the weight of Delgado's missing face kept her rooted. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on her screen. Detective, you're closer than you should be. Stop looking, or you'll end up like him. Her blood ran cold. Whoever they were, they knew she was watching the Web Titans. By the end of the week, Alvarez had pieced together enough to see the shape of the web. Ray Delgado had worked both for the cartel and for mob-linked Tony DeFranco. Eddie Russo introduced him to cartel players, then washed his hands of the fallout. Shadowy figure with a gold watch was seen near Ray's car on the night he vanished. The cartel's warehouse district buzzed with activity too dangerous to ignore. Bet the threads weren't just pulling toward Delgado, they were pulling toward Alvarez. To every step she took brought her deeper into a game where the rules weren't written by law, but by survival. And In Las Vegas, survival was the only currency that mattered. Detective Maria Alvarez had been warned, stop digging, or end up like Ray Delgado. But warnings didn't stop her. They only sharpened her instincts. She couldn't shake the image of Delgado's BMW abandoned in the desert, blood on the wheel. Chips left behind, everything screamed setup, and the warehouse district was her only tangible lead. So Alvarez made a choice. She would go back this time prepared, setting the trap the following night. Alvarez returned to the industrial sprawl on the outskirts of North Las Vegas. She ditched her unmarked squad car and borrowed a beat-up pickup from a retired cop friend. Nothing about the truck screamed police. She dressed plain jeans, a dark hoodie, baseball cap pulled low, no badge, no service weapon on display, just a compact Glock tucked into her waistband. The warehouses sat like sleeping giants, silent metal hulks with graffiti scars. Sodium lights buzzed overhead, throwing yellow halos onto cracked pavement beyond them. The desert stretched empty, and endless. She parked half a block away, slid into the shadows, and waited the meeting at midnight. Headlights cut through the darkness. A black SUV rolled to a stop in front of one warehouse. Two men climbed out, both tall, both broad, their movements sharp. Military. One wore a leather jacket, the other a windbreaker. They weren't locals, they were muscle. Minutes later, another car arrived, a silver sedan. From it stepped a man Alvarez instantly recognized from D-Files, Luis El Toro Morales, the cartel lieutenant himself. Alvarez's breath caught. Morales wasn't supposed to be here. He operated from Mexico, rarely exposing himself in the States. If he was personally in Las Vegas, the stakes were bigger than she thought. Morales lit a cigar, leaned casually against the sedan, and spoke with the two men from her distance. Alvarez couldn't hear the words, but the gestures told a story, pointing, counting, nodding a deal. Then another figure emerged from the warehouse. Alvarez's stomach flipped. It wasn't Ray Delgado, but it was Eddie. Fast hands. Russo. Eddie's game. Alvarez almost swore aloud. Eddie had told her Ray made his own problems, playing dumb about cartel ties, but here he was, laughing and shaking hands with Morales like they were old friends. It clicked. Eddie hadn't just introduced Ray to the cartel. He was the middleman, a fixer, a man who connected gamblers and hustlers to cartel cash, then skimmed his coutand. When Ray tried to cut in on the action or play both sides with Tony DeFranco, Eddie let him burn. Alvarez raised her phone, snapping grainy photos from the shadows. Eddie, Morales, cartel, Musalal, in one frame. Evidence, even if risky. But then she made a mistake. The discovery as Alvarez adjusted her angle. Her boot scraped loose gravel. A faint crunch echoed. One of the cartel guards snapped his head around. His eyes narrowed. Scanning the darkness, Alvarez froze. Pressing herself against the corrugated wall of a warehouse, the guard muttered something in Spanish, then started walking her way, hand drifting toward the gun under his jacket. Her heart pounded. If they caught her here, she'd vanish like Reno badge. No backup. No chance. The guard came closer. Closer, flashlight beam cutting through the night. Alvarez held her breath. Glock drawn low, but ready. Then, from across the lot, Morales barked something sharp. The guard hesitated, glared into the shadows one last time, then turned back. Alvarez exhaled slowly to close the warning escliss. Meeting wrapped quickly after that. Eddie shook Morales' hand, pocketed an envelope, and slid into the SUV with the guards. Morales flicked his cigar into the dirt and drove off in the sedan. The lot went quiet again. Alvarez waited 10 full minutes before moving. She climbed back into the borrowed truck, hands still trembling, and drove away without headlights until she hit the main road. When she finally reached her apartment, she found something waiting for her. An envelope slipped under her door. Inside, another playing card, this time the King of Spades on the back, scrawled in bold black marker. Last chance. Detective, stay out of our game. Alvarez's resolve? Alvarez stared at the card for a long time. Someone was watching her so closely they knew when she left. When she returned, even what apartment she lived in, Fear clawed at her stomach, but beneath it, anger burned hotter. They could send all the cards they wanted. She wasn't folding because now she had photos of Eddie Russo with Morales proof that Ray Delgado's disappearance wasn't just a one-off. Killing it was part of a larger war, and Alvarez wasn't backing down. She was going to find Delgado dead or alive, and she was going to bring down everyone who thought Las Vegas was their playground. Detective Maria Alvarez had learned a truth early in her career. Every organization, no matter how ruthless, had a weak link, and in Las Vegas, Eddie Fast Hands Russo was it. Teddy thrived at the poker tables, but his survival didn't come from luck. It came from playing both sides, always finding an angle, always ducking responsibility. People like Eddie weren't soldiers, they were opportunists. And opportunists cracked when the heat turned up. Alvarez intended to be the flame setting the stage. She didn't bring Eddie into the station. That would spook him, make him clam up, maybe even tip off his friends. Instead, she cornered him where he felt safe, the same smoky poker room off Fremont Street where she'd first met him. Eddie was mid-game, a cocktail sweating on the felt, his grin wide as he raked in a small pot when Alvarez approached. His smile faltered just enough for her to notice. Detective, he said smoothly, though his voice carried an edge this time. Back again. What, you gonna play a hand? Not tonight, Alvarez said, sliding into the seat beside him. She leaned close, voice low. We need to talk now. Eddie glanced at the other players, then excused himself with a smirk, but Alvarez saw the tension in his shoulders as he followed her outside into the alley. Behind the building, the confrontation, the neon glow from Fremont bled weakly into the narrow alley. Eddie lit a cigarette, exhaled slow. So what's this about? Thought we already went over? Ray Alvarez stepped closer, lowering her voice. Don't play games. Eddie, I know you were at the warehouses with Morales for a heartbeat. Eddie froze. The cigarette trembled slightly in his fingers before he forced a laugh. You've been tailing me now. Cute, but I don't know what you think you saw. Alvarez pulled her phone from her pocket and flicked the screen to show the grainy photo she'd snapped. Eddie, Morales, and the muscle all in frame. His smirk vanished. You're done lying, Alvarez said. Delgado disappeared because he crossed someone. I think you know who, and unless you want to go down with him, you're going to start talking. Eddie cracks. Eddie dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his heel. He glanced up and down the alley, then leaned in, his voice dropping. Listen, you don't get it, Morales? He ain't someone you poke at. You think the mob was scary back in the day. These guys make them look like Boy Scouts. Delgado? He thought he was slick, thought he could skim, maybe even deal with Tony DeFranco on the side. You know what that gets you. Eddie tapped 2 fingers to his temple, like a gun. Alvarez's jaw tightened. So Morales had him killed. Eddie shook his head quickly. I didn't say that. I don't know. What I know is Ray was playing both sides, and Tony don't forgive betrayal. Neither does Morales Ray. He was finished the second he thought he could outsmart them both. Where is he, Eddie? Alvarez pressed. Dead. Alive. Which? Eddie hesitated, his eyes flicked with fear, darting toward the street like someone might be listening. Finally, he whispered. I heard. They didn't kill him. Not yet. They're holding him, sending a message. Word is he's stashed out by Sloan Desert warehouses. Not the ones you've been sniffing around. If Morales still has him, he's leverage against Tony, against anyone the fear is. Soon as the words left his mouth, Eddie looked like he regretted them. He rubbed his face hard, muttering under his breath, you didn't hear it from me. You bring Morales down. You drag me with him. You think the cops can protect me. Please, they'll find me before you finish the paperwork. Alvarez studied him, sweat glistened at his hairline. His bravado cracked wide open. Eddie was terrified, and fear made him both valuable and unpredictable. Stay close. Eddie, she said finally, don't run, because if you do, I'll know, and if I get to you before Morales does, you'll wish it was the other way around. Eddie didn't argue. He just flicked away his second cigarette, hands trembling, and slipped back inside the poker room like a man walking into his own grave. Alvarez's dilemma. Back in her car. Alvarez sat for a long time. The revelation changed everything. If Delgado was alive, it wasn't just a recovery, it was a rescue mission, but Sloan was cartel territory. Remote and unforgiving, a direct raid risked Ray's life, and her own worst. The stakes weren't just Delgado anymore. This was about leverage. Morales was holding him as a pawn in the larger war brewing with Tony DeFranco's mob. Connections, which meant Alvarez wasn't chasing up missing person case anymore. She was caught in the middle of a war, and Ray Delgado survival was just the match waiting to light. It. Detective Maria Alvarez couldn't sleep. Eddie Russo's trembling words replayed in her head. I heard they didn't kill him, not yet. They're holding him out by Sloan. Sloan was a speck on the map, an old mining town south of Vegas, swallowed by dust and forgotten by tourists, but its isolation made it perfect for anyone who wanted to keep secrets. Cartel safe houses, weapons caches, bodies buried where no one would find them if Ray Delgado was alive. Every second counted. Preparing the move, Alvarez knew going in alone was reckless, but if she brought a team, word would spread fast, and Morales' men would vanish before she even arrived. Worse, Delgado might vanish with them. So she prepared quietly. She borrowed surveillance gear from a D-contact off the books, long-range lenses, a burner phone. She left her badge and service weapon locked in her apartment safe if she got caught. She wanted no paper trail leading back to the department. In her trunk, she packed a compact Glock with 2 extra mags, a pair of binoculars, a black hoodie, gloves, and desert boots, a small drone with a night vision camera. It wasn't much, but in cartel country, preparation was an illusion. Survival was luck. Arrival in Sloan. The drive down I-15 was quiet, neon fading into darkness by the time Alvarez reached Sloan. The glow of Las Vegas was a distant halo behind her. Sloan was barely a town, just a scattering of trailers, old mining sheds, and industrial warehouses half swallowed by sand. But Alvarez's gut told her the cartel didn't need much, just space. She parked a mile out, hiked through desert scrub, and set up on a rocky ridge overlooking the warehouse Eddie had described through binoculars. She saw it, a squat, corrugated structure surrounded by 3 SUVs. Men with rifles patrolled casually, smoking and talking in low voices. The kind of guards who were relaxed because they didn't expect trouble. Alvarez's pulse quickened. This was it, the drone recon. She launched the drone, its soft whirring almost lost in the desert wind from above. The warehouse revealed more details to guards at the front, one by the rear entrance, another pacing the perimeter. But what made Alvarez's chest tighten was what she saw through a dirty skylight inside. Under a single hanging bulb was a man tied to a chair. Ivan, through grainy night vision, she recognized the sharp jawline, the black hair slicked back, the defiant posture, despite the restraints. Ray Delgado alive. He looked battered, but breathing. His head slumped forward, then jerked upright, as if he refused to give in. Alvarez exhaled shakily. Eddie hadn't lied. Delgado was here. A close call, but as she angled the drone lower for a clearer view, one of the guards below paused. Frowning, he squinted up into the night sky, raising a hand to block the moon. Lee. Alvarez cursed under her breath. The drone was too exposed. She yanked it back, pulling the controls tight until it zipped into the shadows of the ridge. The guard muttered something to another, pointing skyward, but after a few tense seconds, they shrugged it off. Alvarez's heart hammered. She'd almost blown at the weight of choice. She crouched in the rocks, breathing hard, watching Delgado tied up in the warehouse. Every instinct screamed to move in, to storm the building and drag him out, but logic restrained her. 4 armed guards, maybe more inside. Morales' men wouldn't hesitate to gun her down, and Delgado would die in the crossfire. She couldn't save him tonight. Not alone, but she could confirm he was alive. She could plan. She could gather enough proof to force action. Alvarez snapped photos through the drone feed. Delgado tied to the chair, the guards patrolling, the SUVs marked with cartel insignias. She recognized from debriefings it wasn't enough to break the cartel. but it was enough to demand a fight. The ghost in the desert Alvarez packed up and prepared to slip away. But a sound made her freeze. The crunch of boots on gravel behind her. She spun. Glock raised. A figure stood at the edge of the ridge, half hidden in shadow. Not cartel, not police. The man was older, in a pressed suit, despite the desert dust. A gold watch glinting under the moon. His face was familiar from photos, whispered files, and grainy mugshots from the mob archive. Tony DeFranco, the ghost of Vegas mob past. Standing in the flesh, he gave a small smile, hands raised as if unarmed. Detective Alvarez, he said smoothly, voice carrying in the dry night air. We should talk. Seems we've both been watching the same game. Alvarez's realization. Alvarez's stomach sank. Sloan wasn't just cartel territory. The mob was here to watching, waiting, circling Ray. Delgado wasn't just a missing man anymore. He was the centerpiece in a tug-of-war between two criminal empires, and Alvarez, whether she wanted it or not, had just stepped into the center of it. The mob's shadow detective Maria Alvarez tightened her grip on her Glock, keeping her stance steady as the moonlight revealed the sharp, weathered lines of Tony DeFranco's face. He wasn't supposed to be here. Men like him belonged to the old Vegas, the Vegas of smoky backroom deals, casino skim operations, and silent power brokers who wore silk suits while carrying invisible knives. The fact that he was standing on this ridge in Sloan meant only one thing. The mob had never really left. Relax, Detective DeFranco said, lifting his hands slightly higher. His voice was smooth, practiced, with just enough warmth to make you second-guess his intent. If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be talking right now. Alvarez kept her weapon up. You've got about 10 seconds to explain why a washed-up gangster is sneaking around a cartel warehouse. DeFranco chuckled softly, the sound dry as the desert wind washed up. That hurts. I prefer semi-retired, let's just say. I like keeping an eye on new players moving in on my city. The offer. Alvarez didn't lower her gun. Ray Delgado's in there, you know that, don't you? DeFranco's smile thinned. I know a lot of things, including the fact that the Sinaloa boys grabbed him because he was sniffing too close to something he shouldn't have. He glanced down at the warehouse, then back at Alvarez. The question is, what are you planning to do about it? I'm here for Delgado. Alvarez snapped alive. DeFranco tilted his head, studying her. And then what? Arrest him? You think a courtroom's going to protect him from Morale's men? From my people? Delgado's not some saintly citizen in need of rescue. Detective, he's a hot commodity. He's got information both sides want. And you? Alvarez asked. What do you want from me? The old mobster smirked. Partnership. You get Delgado out. You deliver him to me. And in return, I make sure Morales doesn't put a bullet in your head for meddling. Everyone wins. Alvarez's suspicion. Alvarez's jaw tightened. This was exactly what she feared. Delgado wasn't just leverage in a cartel war. Now the mob wanted him too. Handing him over to DeFranco would be trading one cage for another. You expect me to trust you? She asked. DeFranco shrugged casually. Trust is a luxury, but consider this. You're out here alone. You can't take that warehouse by yourself. You know it. I know it. Delgado is alive now. But that won't last forever. Morales isn't a patient man. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like a man who'd negotiated his way through standoffs before. You need allies, and the badge you wear, it won't save you this time. Not out here. Flash of the past for a moment. Alvarez faltered. Memories of old case files flashed through her mind. Clippings about mob influence in the 1980s. Whispers of DeFranco's role in casino skims. Murder for hire. Rumors that never stuck. He was the kind of man who thrived in shadows, manipulating both criminals and lawmen. Now, here he was, offering her the devil's bargain. Why Delgado? She asked finally. What's so important about him? DeFranco's eyes gleamed. Because he's the key. He stumbled onto a shipment route Morales is desperate to protect, and that route, it doesn't just bring drugs into Vegas, it ties into something bigger. Money laundering, offshore accounts, political donations. Delgado has names, dates, numbers. If Morales kills him, the truth dies with him. If I get him, I control the flow of that truth. And if I get him, Alvarez asked. DeFranco gave a slow, dangerous smile. Then you paint a target on your back so large, neither the cartel nor my people will let you breathe. Stalemate. Desert silence pressed, and Alvarez realized she had walked straight into the center of a three-way war. She couldn't trust couldn't outgun the cartel, and couldn't just walk away. You think you're the only one who wants justice, DeFranco said softly, almost kindly, but in Vegas, justice is just another business transaction. The question is, who do you want to do business with? Alvarez lowered her Glock slightly, though her eyes never left him. I'll think about it. DeFranco smirked, slipping his hands back into his pockets. That's all I ask, but don't take too long. Detective time is something Delgado doesn't have with that. He turned and melted into the desert night, leaving Alvarez alone on the ridge. Her mind racing. Alvarez's resolved. She looked back down at the warehouse. Delgado was still inside, head drooping, body slumped but alive. Guards laughed and smoked below, oblivious to how many eyes were on them tonight. Mob, cartel, police, everyone wanted. Delgado, and Alvarez knew one thing. If she let him fall into either side's hands, the truth would never see daylight. She holstered her weapon, exhaled, and whispered to herself, then I'll just have to find a way to steal him back. The air inside the warehouse was thick with gasoline, sweat, and rust. Every breath Ray Delgado took burned his lungs. The single bulb above him flickered, casting shadows that stretched and swayed like predators waiting to pounce. He had lost track of time. Hours bled into days, days into a blur of pain and silence. His wrists ached from the ropes, digging deep into his skin. Raw and bleeding, his face was swollen, lips split. One eye puffed almost shut, but he was alive, and in his world. Alive still meant the game wasn't over. The beating earlier. 2 guards had come in, young, jittery, laughing too loud to mask their nerves. They'd beaten him with the casual cruelty of men following orders, fists and boots landing until Delgado's ribs screamed, "Where's the ledger?" "Huh?" one had demanded. Between punches, "Morales wants to know who you talked to. Who else saw it?" Delgado spat blood at his feet, smirking even as his jaw throbbed. "Ledger? Never heard of it." The second guard kicked him hard enough to send the chair skidding, but Delgado knew their rhythm. They hurt him, they threatened him, but they never went too far. None. Yet that meant Morales still needed him. Breathing Delgado's secret, the cartel thought. They had him cornered, they thought. He was just a low-level hustler who stumbled into their secrets, but Delgado had planned this game for months. He wasn't stupid enough to keep the ledger, the document tying Morales' empire to offshore accounts, shell companies, and crooked politicians in one place. He had copied it, split it, hidden pieces across the city like breadcrumbs. If Morales killed him, those pieces would surface. If the mob got him, they'd twist the information to their advantage. If Delgado played his cards right, he could trade it for his life, maybe even freedom. The voices at night, when the guards dozed or stepped out to smoke. Delgado listened. He had learned to survive by paying attention to whispers through the thin walls. He caught fragments. "Boss says tomorrow might be it. DeFranco's been sniffing around. The old man's back. They think the cop saw him. Morales is pissed." Delgado's pulse quickened at that last one. The cop, that had to mean someone out there was looking for him. Maybe the detective he'd glimpsed weeks ago. Tailing one of Morales' men. It was a fragile hope, but it was enough to keep him upright in the chair. Enough to stop him from breaking when the pain screamed louder than his thoughts. The Visito warehouse door screeched open. Heavy boots echoed on concrete. Delgado forced himself to sit straighter, even as every muscle begged to collapse. It wasn't the guards. This time it was Hector Morales himself. The cartel boss wore a tailored suit that looked absurd in this grimy warehouse, but on him it radiated menace. His slicked back hair glistened under the bulb, his cold eyes scanning Delgado like a butcher sizing up meat. "Ray," Morales said softly, Almost kindly, you've caused me quite a bit of trouble. Delgado's voice was hoarse, cracked, but his smirk never wavered. Glad to know I'm living rent-free in your head. One of the guards struck him across the face. Morales raised a hand, stopping the second blow. No, let him speak, men like him. They're dangerous only when they think they have power. He crouched down, face inches from Delgado's bruised cheek. You've seen too much. You've kept too much. That ledger doesn't belong to you. Give me the names, Delgado, and maybe I let you keep breathing. Delgado spat blood again. This time onto the floor. You kill me. That list sings louder than Sinatra. You let me live. Maybe I forget a few notes for a moment. Silence. Then Morales chuckled, low and dark. You think you're clever, but clever men die just like the rest. He stood, straightened his jacket. Tomorrow, I'll decide if you're worth more, alive or dead. He left, the guards trailing after him. The door slamming shut. Delgado's thoughts. Delgado exhaled slowly, the adrenaline ebbing. His body screamed. His ribs felt cracked, but his mind burned sharper than ever. He had one night before Morales made his decision, one night before the cartel or the Mobor both tightened the noose. But Delgado had survived too many streets, too many cons, to believe in inevitability. He wasn't just a pawn in their war. He was holding the one thing that could topple them all. The ledger wasn't just leverage, it was a weapon, and, if he played it right, it might just buy him the one thing no one believed he could ever have. Freedom. The faint sound as the warehouse grew quiet again. Delgado tilted his head through the broken skylight above. He thought he heard something faint, like the whir of a small machine, a drone. Hope stirred in his chest. Someone was watching. Someone who might still care enough to pull him out of this hell. He allowed himself, just for a second, to believe. Then he straightened his posture, tightened his jaw, and whispered to himself, one more night. Ray, just one more. The rescue gamble detective Maria Alvarez drove back toward Vegas in silence, the desert wind rattling through her cracked window. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her mind replaying every second of what she'd seen in Sloan. Ray Delgado, alive, bound, beaten, but alive. And the warehouse wasn't just guarded, it was crawling with cartel soldiers. She couldn't take it alone, yet every second she waited. Morales crept closer to pulling the trigger, the calculations back in her apartment. Alvarez spread everything she had across the kitchen table. Photos from the drone, sketches of the warehouse perimeter, notes from Eddie Russo, fragments from debriefings. She traced the guards' rotations with her pen. 2 out front, 1 rear. 1 roaming SUVs mean backup inside. She circled Delgado's position under the skylight, vulnerable, but not unreachable. The problem was numbers. She could maybe take 2 men, 3, if luck favored her, but Morales' crew ran with discipline. A single misstep, and Delgado's body would be dumped in the desert before sunrise. And then there was Tony DeFranco. His words echoed in her head. You can't do it alone. You need. Elise Alvarez hated that he was right. The first call, she picked up the burner phone and dialed a number she swore she'd never use again. Jesus Christ. Maria. The voice was low, weary, and familiar. Detective Henry Vega, her former partner. Do you know what time it is? I found Delgado, she said flatly. Silence, then, cautious. Alive. Yes, cartel's got him in Sloan. They'll kill him tomorrow if we don't move. Vega cursed under his breath. You're insane for even going out there. Morales will skin you alive, and if the brass finds out, they won't. Alvarez cut in. I need eyes. Back up. 1 night in and out. You're asking me to throw my career in the trash. I'm asking you to save a man's life. Another long pause, then Vega sighed. Text me the details, but if this goes south, you never knew me. Alvarez allowed herself a small exhale of relief. 1 ally secured, not enough, but a start. The unexpected visitor an hour later, as she packed weapons into her duffel. A knock echoed at her door. Her hand flew to her Glock. Few people knew where she lived. Relax, detective, came the voice from the other side, smooth, mocking. Tony DeFranco. Alvarez cursed under her breath. slid the chain, and cracked the door. The mobster leaned against the frame in a tailored suit, holding a glass of whiskey like he owned the place. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. "You've got 10 seconds before I slam this door in your face." Alvarez snapped at. Franco chuckled. "Fair enough. Then I'll keep it short. You're going to Sloan tomorrow." I want in. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because Morales is sloppy. He's getting too bold. Taking Delgado was a mistake if I help you pull him out." I embarrass Morales. I remind him this is my city. DeFranco sipped his drink. "And you get Delgado breathing, with no blood on your badge, and then what?" Alvarez asked. "You expect me to hand him over?" DeFranco smiled, but his eyes were cold. "One problem at a time. Detective, tomorrow we focus on keeping him alive." Alvarez's dilemma when DeFranco left. Alvarez sank onto the couch, head in her hands. Every instinct told her working with the mob was a deal with the devil. But the truth gnawed at her. He had resources, she didn't. Vehicles, men, weapons, the kind of muscles she'd need to even the odds. In Sloan, if she refused him, Delgado would likely die. If she accepted, she risked handing Delgado to the mob instead of saving him. Either way, the city's underworld would feast on her choices. But as she stared at the drone photos, Delgado's battered silhouette burned into her mind. She didn't have the luxury of perfect options. Survive tonight, worry about the fallout tomorrow. The plan by dawn, Alvarez had sketched it out. Vega would cover from a ridge with a scoped rifle. Alvarez would breach through the skylight, using the noise as distraction. DeFranco's men, if she let them in, would handle the exterior guards. Risky, chaotic, but it was the only chance. She zipped her duffel shut, holstered her weapon, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow. Ray, hold on one more night." The raid at Sloan, the desert at night, was a strange kind of quiet, heavy, suffocating, as if the earth itself held its breath from her vantage point on the ridge. Detective Maria Alvarez scanned the warehouse below. The same corrugated shell, the same armed guards patrolling like clockwork. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, they weren't just watching, they were coming for Ray Delgado. Final preparations. Alvarez checked her Glock, racked the slide, and glanced at Henry Vega beside her. He lay prone, his scoped rifle trained on the front entrance. His expression was grim, but steady. "You sure about this, Maria?" Vega whispered. "No," she admitted, "but Delgado doesn't have another night behind them." Two black SUVs idled silently with their headlights off inside. DeFranco's men, well-dressed thugs in tailored jackets, carrying suppressed submachine guns. They looked like they were heading to a nightclub, not a gunfight. Tony DeFranco himself leaned against the hood, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. "Remember, detective," he said softly, "my boys cover the outside, you go in, grab Delgado, and get out quick and clean." "Nothing about this is clean," Alvarez muttered, pulling her hood up. The signal midnight struck. Alvarez tightened her gloves, glanced once more at the skylight above Delgado's prison, and gave the signal. Vega's rifle cracked a single, precise shot. One of the guards by the front gates dropped silently into the dirt before the others could react. DeFranco's men moved, shadows spilling across the sand. Suppressed fire whispered in the night. Another guard fell, then another. The cartel soldiers shouted in Spanish, scrambling for cover, their rifles blazing back into the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit the desert like lightning, and in the chaos, Alvarez sprinted the breach. She reached the warehouse wall, scaled a rusted ladder, and hauled herself onto the roof. Bullets snapped past, sparks sprang off the metal siding, heart hammering. She crawled to the broken skylight and peered inside. There he was, Ray Delgado, still tied to the chair under the bulb, head lolling but alive. Two guards rushed in, weapons drawn, shouting about an attack. Alvarez exhaled, steadied herself, and dropped through the skylight. She hit the ground hard, rolling. Glock up. 2 shots, 2 bodies, hit the floor before they could even register what had happened. Delgado jerked awake, blinking in shock. "Alvarez," his voice cracked. You're actually here. Don't thank me yet," she muttered, rushing to untie his ropes. "Can you walk?" Delgado grimaced. Bloodied but defiant walk. Run. Dance if I have to. Just get me out the firestorm, ass. She cut the last rope. The warehouse door burst open. More cartel soldiers stormed in, rifles raised down. Alvarez shouted, dragging Delgado behind the chair as gunfire ripped across the room. Splinters exploded from the wooden beams. She returned fire, dropping one, wounding another, but there were too many for every one she put down. Another surged forward suddenly. A deafening roar shook the walls. Automatic fire from outside DeFranco's men had flanked the entrance, spraying the cartel soldiers with brutal precision. The warehouse became a slaughterhouse of echoing gunfire and shouted orders to escape move. Alvarez hauled Delgado to his feet, slinging his arm over her shoulder together. They staggered toward the rear exit. Viga's voice crackled over the earpiece Alvarez had borrowed. Maria, rear guard down. You're clear on the backside. But more trucks are rolling in from the highway. You've got maybe 3 minutes before this place is crawling. Alvarez cursed. Kicking open the rear door, cool desert air hit her face as they stumbled out. Delgado, half dragged, half running in SUV, screeched to a stop beside them. DeFranco himself was behind the wheel, cigarette still dangling from his lips. Get in, sweetheart. Alvarez hesitated only a second before shoving Delgado inside and climbing after him. Bullets pinged off the frame as the mobster floored the gas, the SUV fishtailing across the dirt behind them. The warehouse burned with muzzle flashes, shouts, and screams. The chase headlights flared in the rearview mirror. 2 cartel trucks barreled after them, engines growling, rifles firing from open windows. Duck. Alvarez shoved Delgado down as glass shattered around them. She leaned out the side window, firing back in controlled bursts. One of the cartel trucks swerved, skidding into the sand, but the other closed in, bumping their rear bumper. DeFranco cursed, wrenching the wheel. Hold on. The SUV lurched off-road, bouncing across jagged rocks and desert scrub. The cartel truck followed. Relentless. Vega's voice came again over the radio. Maria, 2 more trucks heading your way from Sloan. You need to shake them now. Alvarez glanced at Delgado, who was pale but alert. Clutching his ribs, he met her eyes and said hoarsely, they won't stop, not until I'm dead. The cliffside turned. The road ahead curved sharply toward a dry canyon drop. DeFranco grinned like a maniac, cigarette clenched between his teeth. Time to see if they can fly. He swerved hard, tires screaming. The SUV fishtailed dangerously close to the canyon edge before catching grip and shooting forward. The cartel truck wasn't so lucky. It clipped the edge, flipped end over end, and vanished into the ravine below. In a thunder of metal and dust, the desert went quiet again, save for the roar of their own engine. Breathless, Alvarez slumped back against the seat, heart pounding. Delgado leaned against her, his voice a rasp. Told you I could still dance. But she wasn't smiling, because even as the adrenaline surged, she knew this wasn't over. They had Delgado. Yes, but Morales would never stop, and DeFranco sitting calm at the wheel, cigarette glowing, hadn't just helped for free. They had escaped the cage, but they'd walked straight into another SUV skidded to a stop in a shadowed alley behind an abandoned casino on the outskirts of Vegas. Dust and adrenaline still clung to the air as the engine clicked and cooled. Detective Maria Alvarez shoved the door open, hauling Delgado out before DeFranco could get too comfortable in his role as savior inside. She ordered, half carrying Delgado toward a rusted service entrance. DeFranco killed the engine, stepped out, and straightened his suit jacket. You're welcome. By the way, without me, your little midnight stunt would have ended with body bags. Alvarez shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. This isn't over, not by a long shot. Oh, I know. DeFranco smirked, lighting another cigarette. That's the fun part, the safe house inside. The air smelled of mildew and stale smoke. The casino had been shuttered for years, a skeleton of faded neon and dust-coated poker tables, but it served as a temporary safe, at least until Alvarez figured out the next move. She sat Delgado in a cracked vinyl booth. His face was battered, shirt soaked with blood and sweat, but his eyes burned with stubborn fire. Vega arrived minutes later, slipping through the back door, Rifle still slung, he froze at the sight of Delgado alive, then let out a low whistle. "Jesus, you actually pulled it off barely," Alvarez muttered. She handed Vega a first aid kit, then crouched across from Delgado. "Start talking. Why is Morales willing to start a war over you?" Delgado's confession? Delgado coughed, spitting blood into a napkin. His voice was ragged, but steady. "It's not me he wants, it's what I found." He leaned forward, lowering his voice, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Morales has been running more than drugs. He's built a pipeline product and cash out millions, laundered through fake casinos, shell companies, even political campaigns, and I've got the proof." Alvarez stiffened. The ledger. Delgado nodded. "Names, dates, transfers, politicians, bankers, even cops." Morales thought he could bury it, but I copied it, split it up, hid the pieces across the city. "He kills me. Those pieces go public." Vega cursed under his breath. "If that's true, Morales doesn't just lose money, he loses protection." Delgado gave a bloody grin. "Exactly, and DeFranco wants it just as bad. Imagine what the mob could do with leverage over half the city's power brokers." Alvarez's stomach twisted. She realized the full weight of what Delgado carried. This wasn't just a case. It was dynamite. DeFranco's interruption from the doorway. DeFranco clapped slowly, cigarette smoke curling in the dim light. Well, the infamous ledger. Glad we're all being honest now." Alvarez snapped to her feet, hand on her Glock. "You were listening?" "Of course I was listening," DeFranco said smoothly, "and I'll make it simple. Give me the ledger, and Morales is finished. I'll keep Delgado safe. You'll even get to play hero cop in the papers. Everyone wins." Delgado barked a laugh. "Despite the pain, safe. With you. Please. Morales wants me dead. You want me chained." DeFranco's eyes narrowed. "Don't overestimate your value. Kid, you're not special. You're just a key. Keys belong to whoever holds the lock." Alvarez's dilemma. The room crackled with tension. Alvarez's mind raced. Cartel on one side, mob on the other. Delgado caught in the middle, and her stuck between devils with no clean way out. "Maria," Vega warned softly. Sensing her turmoil, she turned to Delgado. "Where is it? Where's the ledger?" Delgado hesitated, eyes flicking between Alvarez and DeFranco. "Hidden, but I'm not saying where, until I know which way this coin is going to land." "Wrong answer," DeFranco said, stepping closer, his men's shadows shifting outside the door. Alvarez raised her Glock, leveling it at his chest. "Take one more step, and you'll find out how fast a mob boss can bleed for the first time." DeFranco's smirk faltered the warning before the standoff could explode. Vega's phone buzzed. He glanced down, paled, and swore. "Maria, cartel convoys just rolled out of Sloan. Morales knows we took Delgado. They're coming." The safe house seemed to shrink around them. DeFranco flicked ash onto the floor, his confidence returning. "Then we'd better decide fast whose side you're really on, detective, because when Morales gets here, there won't be time for debates." Alvarez's pulse pounded. Delgado's secret was bigger than she'd ever imagined. The ledger wasn't just evidence, it was a noose, and whoever held it could choke the city. And now, with cartel trucks rumbling toward them and the mob breathing down her neck, she had one impossible choice to make: trust the devil she knew, or the devil she didn't. Silence inside the abandoned casino cracked under the distant hum of engines. Detective Maria. Alvarez froze, her Glock still trained on DeFranco. Vega pressed against the broken blinds. Peeking out at the desert road, his face told the story. Before his words did their hear, headlights bloomed on the horizon, growing into a swarm of SUVs and pickup trucks. Dust kicked up behind them, glowing in the moonlight like smoke trails. Morales hadn't wasted time. He was bringing an army. Alvarez's gut clenched. She had seen cartel raids before. Brutal, merciless, surgical in their violence. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an extermination. Fortifying the safe house positions, Vega barked. Snapping into survival mode, he slid a rifle into Alvarez's hands. Even as her mind screamed, she was still a cop, not a soldier. DeFranco didn't flinch. He strolled toward the doorway, unfazed. "My men will hold the perimeter," he said, flicking his cigarette into the dust. But make no mistake, detective, without me, you're dead inside of 5 minutes, Alvarez wanted to argue, but there was no time already. The sound of doors slamming echoed through the night. Cartel gunmen spilled out, fanning into formation. Automatic rifles gleamed in their hands. Jesus, Delgado muttered, clutching his side. That's not a hit squad, that's a death squad. The first gunfire shattered the night like fireworks. Rapid bursts hammering the walls, glass exploded. Wood splintered. Vega dropped flat, returning fire through the broken blinds. Contact north side, he shouted. DeFranco's men roared back with heavy fire, the air thick with smoke and dust. Alvarez ducked, dragging Delgado under the booth as bullets ripped through the vinyl seats above them. Her heart slammed in her chest. This wasn't policing. This was War Morale's voice through the chaos. A voice boomed from outside, amplified by a megaphone. Alvarez. It was Morales himself, smooth and venomous. You're playing the wrong game. Hand over Delgado, and I'll let you live. Keep him, and I'll burn you all alive. Alvarez's jaw tightened. She shouted back over the gunfire, "You'll have to come get him." DeFranco laughed, even as bullets punched holes in the wall near his head. "Careful, detective." That sounded almost like loyalty. Dangerous habit in this city. Breaking point. A grenade clinked against the floor, spinning into the room. Vega's eyes went wide down. He kicked it back just in time, the blast erupting outside, shaking the casino's bones. The roof groaned. Dust rained from the ceiling. Delgado coughed, his voice raw. "If they breach, it's over. Morales won't stop until I'm in a shallow grave. Then give me the ledger." DeFranco snapped, crouched behind a toppled poker table. "I can end this one phone call." Morales disappears. Alvarez turned on him, fury cutting through the fear. "You don't want to save him, you just want leverage. You're no different than Morales." "Wrong," DeFranco said, eyes glinting. "I'm worse, but I get results." The breach shouts rose outside. Closer now. The cartel was advancing in waves, testing the walls. Then, the crash of metal. A truck rammed into the casino's side, tearing through. Weak plaster gunmen poured in, spraying bullets. Vega spun, cutting two down in a burst of fire. Alvarez dropped one with her Glock, the recoil jerking her arm numb. DeFranco's men clashed hand to hand with others, knives flashing in the strobe of muzzle fire. The casino turned into a battlefield. Screams, gunfire, blood. The smell of cordite burned Alvarez's lungs. Morales steps in through the haze. Morales himself appeared, calm, precise, dressed in a tailored suit. Despite the chaos, his men fanned around him, cutting a path. He locked eyes with Alvarez. "Detective, last chance. Delgado walks with me, and you don't." Behind her, Delgado rasped, "Don't do it, he'll kill me anyway." Morales raised his pistol, slow and deliberate, aiming not at Delgado, but at Alvarez. "Then you die first." Alvarez's choice time slowed. Alvarez felt every detail, the sweat on her temple, the weight of the Glock in her hand, the frantic beat of her heart. She had two devils in her house. Morales, ruthless and calculating; DeFranco, manipulative and dangerous; and Delgado, bleeding out, clutching the secret that could topple them both. If she handed Delgado over, she lived, but the city would stay chained to the cartel. If she sided with maybe Morales died, but Vegas would trade one devil for another. And if she kept fighting, she risked all their lives for a ledger that might not even see daylight. Vega's shout broke the moment. "Maria, move." The shot of aura squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked louder than the storm of gunfire around her. Morales staggered, blood blooming across his shoulder. His pistol fell. Chaos erupted as his men surged forward, dragging him back, unleashing a furious wave of fire. "Retreat," one shouted. "Get the boss out." And just like that, the tide shifted. The cartel pulled Morales into a retreat, their vehicles roaring back into the desert. Night silence swallowed the casino, broken only by Delgado's ragged breathing and the ringing in Alvarez's ears. Aftermath. DeFranco stepped over bodies, brushing dust off his jacket. "Not bad, detective. I almost believed you'd hand him over. Alvarez lowered her gun, chest heaving. This isn't a game. DeFranco Morales will be back stronger. Of course he will, DeFranco said with a grin. But until then, we have something he wants, Delgado, and more importantly, he tapped his temple. The ledger. Alvarez turned to Delgado, who sat slumped but alive, eyes locked on her. You just made Vegas the center of a war, she whispered. Delgado gave a weak smile. It already was. Now the city just can't pretend anymore. The desert was quiet again. To quiet. Detective Maria Alvarez stood at the shattered doorway of the abandoned casino. The smell of blood and gunpowder still thick in the air beyond the wreckage. Headlights disappeared into the blackness as Morales' men retreated. But Alvarez knew it wasn't over, not even close behind her. Delgado sat slumped against a booth, his shirt torn and stained. Vega crouched beside him, patching his side with makeshift bandages. You're lucky Morales wanted you alive, Vega muttered, tightening the gauze. His men could have ended you 10 times over. Delgado groaned. Lucky isn't the word I'd use across the room. DeFranco paced like a man who had just won a chess match. Collected cigarette glowing in the darkness. That, he said, was the sound of balance shifting. Alvarez turned sharply. You think this is a win? Half this city's about to go up in flames. He exhaled smoke, smirking. War isn't bad for business. Chaos creates opportunity, and now Morales is bleeding. Literally, that gives us the advantage. Alvarez stepped closer, anger boiling. There is no us. You're a criminal, DeFranco. Don't think for 1 second I've forgotten that. And yet, he countered smoothly, you're alive because of me. Morales regroups, 20 miles away. In a fortified ranch compound outside Henderson, Morales sat at a long table, shirt soaked in blood where Alvarez's bullet had torn through his shoulder. His men hovered nervously, waiting for his word. He sipped tequila through clenched teeth, face pale with fury. A detective, he said at last, voice low. Dangerous, a goddamn detective. Put me on my knees. His lieutenant tried to soothe him. Boss, you survived. We'll regroup. The city is still yours. Morales slammed the glass on the table, shattering it. No, not while Delgado breathes. Not while that ledger exists. He leaned forward, eyes burning. I want her. Alvarez, I want her head on my desk. And I want Delgado's body in the desert by sunrise. The lieutenant nodded quickly, already sending orders. The cartel would not retreat. They would escalate Alvarez's dilemma back in the ruined casino. Alvarez stared at Delgado, torn between duty and survival. She couldn't just hand him to the feds. Not yet. Morales had people everywhere. The ledger was the only thing keeping Delgado alive. Ray, she said quietly, crouching in front of him. Where is it? The real ledger, not scraps, not copies, the whole thing. Delgado licked his cracked lips. Hidden. I told you. I broke it up. If Morales gets it, Vegas stays his playground. If DeFranco gets it, the mob owns the city again. The only way it means anything is if the right person sees it. And who's that? Alvarez asked you. Delgado rasped. The one person not bought and sold. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. She wanted to argue, to say she was just a cop doing her job, but deep down, she knew Delgado was right. If she gave the ledger to the wrong hands, she wouldn't just be betraying her badge. She'd be sentencing the entire city. DeFranco's offered. DeFranco stubbed out his cigarette, strolling toward them with a predator's ease. Let's cut through the sentiment, shall we? He crouched beside Delgado, his voice calm, almost soothing. Give it to me. Morales dies, the cartel crumbles, and you get to keep breathing. Delgado sneered. Yeah, and then Vegas becomes your kingdom. Same poison, different bottle. DeFranco smiled faintly. Better the devil you know. Alvarez yanked him back by the arm, fury sparking. You don't get to play kingmaker here. On the contrary, DeFranco said softly, I already am. Morales is wounded. The feds are useless, and you. He studied her with cold amusement. You're in too deep to climb out. Vegas warning later. While DeFranco stepped outside to speak with his men, Vega pulled Alvarez aside. His voice was low, urgent. Maria, This is getting out of hand. Morales won't stop, DeFranco won't back down. And Delgado's just one man. Not worth the city burning. Alvarez's jaw tightened. You think we just hand him over? I think we picked the lesser evil, Vega said grimly. Or we're all dead before sunrise. She hated him for saying it. But she hated herself more for knowing he was right. The city reacts by dawn. News of the firefight had spread through Vegas. Gunfire near the Strip wasn't unusual. But this was different. Entire blocks whispered about a cartel war. Casino bosses made frantic calls to private security firms. Politicians in Carson City demanded answers, and somewhere in the city's underbelly, gamblers and hustlers alike whispered one phrase, the ledger. Everyone wanted it. No one knew who had it. Morales' message at sunrise. Alvarez's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Morales' voice slid through the line. Smooth as silk. You should have taken my deal. Detective, now the blood is on your hands. By tonight, this city will remember who owns it. The line went dead before she could respond. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise loss. Vegas woke up to fire at 6:14 a.m. The first explosion ripped through the parking structure of a mid-tier casino off the Strip. The blast rocked slot machines, sent tourists screaming through the lobby, and lit up the desert sky with a plume of black smoke. By the time first responders arrived, Morales' message was already clear. Vegas was under siege. 2 hours later, a drive-by shredded the facade of a nightclub tied to DeFranco's crew. At noon, a city councilman known for opposing casino expansion was found shot in his car, execution-style. By sunset, the Strip was crawling with cops. Tourists evacuated. Casinos shuttered, but Alvarez knew it was just the beginning. Morales wasn't attacking businesses, he was making an example, and his target wasn't the city itself. His target was Delgado Alvarez, on the run inside a dingy motel 2 miles off Fremont Street. Alvarez paced the room, phone glued to her ear. Vega sat by the window, rifle propped against the sill, scanning the street for shadows. Delgado lay on the bed, pale and feverish, but his eyes never left Alvarez. Nothing. He croaked. Alvarez shook her head. The call had been to her captain. Red tape. Bureaucracy. Excuses. The department couldn't protect them. Not from Morales. They're spooked, she muttered. They don't want to admit how deep this goes. Delgado smirked weakly. Of course not. Vegas runs on silence. Always has. She dropped into a chair, running a hand through her hair. Then we're on our own. Vegas frustration. Vega slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle, jaw tight. This is suicide. Morales is carving up the city, and we're hiding in a damn motel, waiting for him to knock on the door. Alvarez snapped back. You think I don't know that? Then stop protecting him, Vega shot back, nodding at Delgado. He's not worth the body count. Let him go. Let Morales take his pound of flesh, and maybe, just maybe, we survive this. Delgado laughed bitterly, coughing blood. You really think killing me stops him? Morales doesn't need me alive anymore. He just needs to erase what I know. And what do you know, Ray? Vega demanded, because so far, all I've seen is blood, bodies, and half a city about to implode. Delgado's voice hardened. I know where the ledger is. The revelation. The room went still. Alvarez's eyes locked on his. You said it was in pieces. It is, Delgado said, pushing himself upright despite the pain. But there's one master copy. Everything, every transfer, every name, every dirty cop and politician on Morales' payroll. I couldn't destroy it. Too much power, too much leverage, so I hid it where no one would think to look. Where? Alvarez pressed. Delgado hesitated, sweat dripping down his temples. In plain sight. It's buried in casino records, hidden under layers of false accounts, ghost employees, rigged slot payouts, all coded without me. No one could untangle it. Alvarez's pulse quickened. Then we need to get it before Morales burns the city down. Looking. Morales counterattacked that night. As Alvarez and her team prepared to move, Morales unleashed his boldest strike yet. A convoy of cartel trucks stormed Fremont Street, spraying bullets into DeFranco's strip club, igniting a firestorm of gunfights. Tourists screamed and scattered, neon signs flickering in the chaos on live television. Morales made his move. A masked cartel soldier dragged a local news anchor into frame. Gun pressed to his temple behind him. Vegas burned. This city belongs to Morales, the soldier declared. Voice steady, hand over Delgado. Or, tomorrow, we level the strip, the feed cut, leaving only static. The mob reacts later. DeFranco called Alvarez directly. His voice was calm, but the edge beneath it was unmistakable. You see the news, detective? Morales is unhinged. You think you can keep playing both sides. But let me spell it out. Delgado's ledger doesn't just destroy Morales. It destroys everyone. Politicians, bankers, casino bosses. If that list hits daylight, the whole damn city collapses. Do you want that on your conscience? Alvarez clenched the phone. Maybe it needs to collapse. DeFranco chuckled darkly. Spoken like someone who's never buried in it. You can't fix Vegas. By burning it, you just make room for a new devil. Let me take care of Morales. Hand me Delgado. Hand me the ledger, and I'll keep the city standing. She hung up without answering the decision. Back in the motel room, Alvarez sat beside Delgado, lowering her voice. Tell me the truth, Ray. If I get this ledger, if I expose it, does it fix anything? Or does it just kill us faster? Delgado looked her dead in the eye. It's the only shot you've got at saving Vegas, but it'll cost you everything. Vega's voice was grim. And if we don't, Morales wins, DeFranco wins. The city stays a prison with neon lights. Alvarez's chest tightened. She could hear the faint sirens outside, smell the smoke drifting from the strip, feel the weight of the badge in her pocket. Every path was suicide, but only one gave them a chance. She stood, holstering her Glock. Then we find the ledger tonight. As they packed up to leave, a black SUV rolled past the motel. Alvarez froze, watching its shadow crawl across the curtains. She recognized the crest on the windshield. Cartel. They weren't safe anymore. Morales was hunting them, block by block. Delgado whispered, "He's not going to stop." Alvarez drew her weapon, eyes fixed on the door. Neither am I. The Golden Oasis Casino looked like every other jewel on the strip. Gold-plated doors, velvet carpets, gamblers hunched over green felt tables. Tourists laughed, dice rolled, and slot machines sang their hypnotic lullaby. But for Detective Maria Alvarez, the casino wasn't entertainment. It was a battlefield, because somewhere deep inside its walls, hidden among thousands of pages of fake payouts and coded transactions, was Delgado's master copy of the ledger, the key to toppling Morales' empire. And tonight, they were going to steal it, preparing the heist in the back seat of a battered sedan parked 2 blocks away. Alvarez studied blueprints spread across the dashboard. Vega checked his rifle, while Delgado leaned forward, his face pale but determined. The ledger's buried in accounting files, Delgado explained, tapping a section of the map stored in the casino's sub-level vault. Not money, records. Everything gets funneled here before it's sent to offshore servers. Alvarez frowned. How do we get in? Delgado gave a faint smile. That's the easy part. I designed the system. The hard part is getting out alive. Slipping in, they entered through the service entrance. Alvarez in a casino uniform borrowed from Delgado's old contacts, Vega dressed as maintenance, and Delgado limping between them with forged clearance. The hallways buzzed with employees too busy to notice 3 more faces. Cameras blinked overhead, but Delgado fed codes into a handheld device, looping the footage as they walked. Alvarez's pulse pounded as they approached. The elevator leading underground every second felt like a gamble inside the lift. Delgado's hand shook as he swiped his badge. The door slid shut. Once we're down there, he muttered. We'll have 10 minutes before someone notices the loop. After that, Morales' men will know exactly where we are. The vault wasn't glamorous. No piles of gold, no glittering treasures, just rows of steel shelves stacked with binders, hard drives, and servers humming in the dark. Delgado moved quickly, pulling open drawers, muttering codes. It's here. It has to be here. Alvarez stood guard by the door, Nerves razor-sharp, Vega scanned the shadows. Rifle ready finally, Delgado yanked out a slim binder. Unmarked except for a single black dot on the spine, his hands trembled as he flipped it open, revealing pages filled with codes, transfers, and names. This is it, he whispered. The master ledger, the interruption. The elevator dinged. Alvarez spun. Gun-raised footsteps echoed down the hall. Voices. Cartel's Spanish sharpened, clipped mouth. Vega hissed. Delgado clutched the ledger as they ducked behind shelves. The vault door creaked open, and 3 armed men stepped inside, scanning the room for a moment. Silence hung, then one spotted the flicker of Alvarez's shadow. Ahi. Gunfire erupted, bullets shredded binders, sparks flying from servers. Alvarez dropped one cartel soldier with a double tap. Vega cut down another. The roar of his rifle deafening. Delgado crouched low, clutching the ledger to his chest like it was life itself. The last gunman lunged, knife flashing, catching Vega off guard. Alvarez fired, but the click of an empty chamber echoed louder than the shot. The blade slashed toward Herculo's collat. The last second, Delgado swung the binder like a weapon, slamming it into the attacker's skull. The man crumpled, unconscious. Alvarez exhaled hard, heart hammering. She grabbed Delgado by the arm. You just saved my life. Delgado smirked through the sweat. That's one more reason you can't let me die. Escape with alarms blaring now. They bolted for the elevator. Vega hit the button, but instead of rising, the door slid open to reveal 6 more cartel soldiers waiting inside. Down, Alvarez shouted. Vega opened fire, sparks and screams filling the hallway. Alvarez dragged Delgado behind cover, clutching the ledger. The air filled with smoke, alarms howling, sprinklers hissing overhead. This wasn't a retrieval anymore. It was survival. The trap has. They fought their way back toward the service exit. A voice echoed through the casino's intercom system. Smooth, mocking. Morales Detective Alvarez. He purred. Did you really think you could steal from me in my own house? You have my book. I have your city. Let's see which one matters more. Alvarez's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a counterstrike. It was a trap. Morales had wanted them to find the ledger. He had wanted to draw them out. And now, with the ledger in her hands, she realized the truth. She wasn't the hunter. She was the bait. The strip. Burns. The strip was never silent, even at 3 a.m. It pulsed like a living creature. Neon buzzing, music thundering from nightclubs, limousines rolling past fountains and fake pyramids to tourists. It was paradise to Detective Alvarez. It was about to become hell. Vega and Delgado stumbled out of the Golden Oasis service alley, their bodies soaked in sweat and blood. Delgado clutched the master ledger to his chest like a life raft. Vega scanned rooftops, rifle still hot from the firefight. Alvarez's instincts screamed one word: trap. The ambush. They reached the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard when headlights flared. A black SUV screeched across the sidewalk, cutting them off. The doors flew open, and half a dozen cartel soldiers spilled out, rifles raised. Run! Alvarez barked. Bullets ripped into neon signs, sending sparks raining onto tourists. Screams cut through the night as gamblers, bachelorette parties, and families scattered in panic. The strip, usually a playground, now looked like a battlefield. Alvarez dove behind a concrete planter, returning fire. Vega knelt beside her, laying down suppressing bursts. Delgado, pale and shaking, crawled behind a parked taxi, clutching the ledger tighter. Then more SUVs rolled in, one from the south, another from the north. Morales men were sealing the strip, boxing them in. Innocent blood. Chaos spread like wildfire. A tour bus screeched to a halt, its passengers diving for cover as stray bullets shattered windows. A man in a sequined Elvis jumpsuit was thrown to the pavement, blood pooling under him. Stomach clenched. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a massacre. Morales wanted her pinned down where civilians would suffer most. He wasn't just killing her, he was destroying her reputation. You seeing this? Vega shouted over the gunfire. He's turning Vegas into a war zone. Alvarez gritted her teeth. firing back. Then we finish it before he does. The mob joins in before she could move. Another wave of gunfire erupted, not from Morales' cartel, but from across the street. Men in sharp suits, some with rolled-up sleeves, emerged from a nightclub. Mobsters armed with shotguns and pistols. They opened fire on the cartel soldiers, bullets tearing into SUVs. For a moment, Alvarez thought they were saved, until she saw the insignia on one of the mobsters' jackets. The Romano crime family, the same mobsters who once ran the Golden Oasis. The same men who wanted Delgado dead now. It wasn't just cartel versus cops, it was cartel versus mob, versus everyone caught in the crossfire. Viga's last stand. The firefight reached fever pitch. Viga, crouched beside Alvarez, emptied his rifle into the mobster's line. His eyes burned with adrenaline. "We're not getting out of this clean," he growled. "Take Delgado, take the book, I'll hold them." Alvarez's heart twisted. No, not like this. But before she could stop him, Vega shoved her toward Delgado. He stepped into the open, spraying bullets in all directions, drawing cartel fire and mob rage alike. For one fleeting moment, Alvarez saw him silhouetted against the neon, a lone soldier holding back an army. Then the gunfire swallowed him. Whole. The face of Morales. Alvarez dragged Delgado into a casino lobby. Glass shattering around them. Tourists screamed as dealers ducked behind tables. The flashing slot machines felt surreal against the blood and smoke pouring inside. And then she saw him across the chaos. Standing calmly in the casino's shattered doorway was Raul Morales, tall, immaculate in a white suit. His dark hair slicked back, his smile was cold, his eyes gleaming with triumph, flanked by 2 bodyguards. He stepped inside as if he owned the building. "Detective Alvarez," he said smoothly, his voice carrying over the chaos. "You've done exactly as I hoped. You brought me the ledger." Alvarez raised her gun, aiming at his chest. "Over my dead body." Morales' smile widened. "Detective can be arranged." The casino showed out. The casino floor was a madhouse. Slot machines kept blinking and chiming in surreal defiance, as if mocking the carnage. Card tables were overturned, chips scattered across the carpet like confetti. Tourists who hadn't escaped cowered under blackjack tables while cartel soldiers swept through the aisles. Detective Maria Alvarez crouched behind a roulette wheel, breath ragged, pistol slick in her hand beside her. Raymond Delgado clutched the ledger to his chest, his face pale, eyes darting in terror across the room. Raul Morales moved like a man in control of everything. His white suit gleamed under the neon lights. Untouched by blood or smoke, his soldiers fanned out, rifles raised, flushing Alvarez from her cover. "You can't run forever," Detective Morales called out, his voice calm and rich, as if he were addressing a crowd instead of orchestrating slaughter. "Vegas belongs to me, every chip, every dealer, every cop on the take, and now, so do you." Delgado's hands trembled as he tugged on Alvarez's sleeve. "He's right. Maria, we can't beat him here. He's too powerful." Alvarez shot him a hard look. "Get a grip. Ray, you survived the desert. You survived his men. You're not dying here. That ledger is our weapon." Delgado shook his head, clutching the binder like it was the only thing keeping him breathing. "You don't get it. The names inside. They're not just cartel, politicians, judges, casino execs. If Morales doesn't kill us, those people will." Alvarez clenched her jaw. The rot went deeper than she'd imagined. Morales advanced. The sound of footsteps echoed, polished leather shoes tapping against tile. Morales himself entered the center of the casino floor. Flanked by 2 bodyguards, he carried no weapon, but his confidence was sharper than any blade. "Detective," he said, his tone almost paternal, "hand me the book. I'll even let you and Delgado leave town alive. You want to be a hero. Heroes don't last in this city, survivors do." Alvarez rose from behind cover, gun leveled at his chest. "Funny, that's exactly what I told myself before I decided I was done surviving. You're not walking out of here." Morales, for the first time, his smile faltered. Firefight in neon gunfire exploded. Alvarez dropped one bodyguard with 2 quick shots. The other fired back. Bullets tearing through slot machines, sparks rained down as a jackpot sign flickered wild. Delgado crawled across the floor, trying to stay out of sight, but Morales noticed he lunged forward. Seizing Delgado by the collar and dragging him upright, "Give me the book," Morales roared, his calm mask shattering. He pressed a pistol taken from his fallen guard against Delgado's head. Alvarez froze, finger tight on the trigger, a deadly gamble for a heartbeat. The casino went silent, except for the wailing of alarms. Morales smirked, regaining his composure. "You have a choice. Detective, your witness, or your evidence, which matters more?" Delgado's eyes begged her not to shoot. His voice cracked. "Maria, don't risk it." Alvarez's mind raced. If she shot Morales, Delgado might die. If she surrendered, the ledger was gone, and Morales' empire would remain untouchable. And then she remembered Vega's last words on the strip: "Take the book, take Delgado, I'll hold them both." She had to save both. The roulette trick. Her eyes flicked to the roulette wheel in front of her. Black and red numbers. The ball still spinning from when someone had abandoned the table. An idea sparked. She kicked the wheel hard. It spun off balance, slamming into the floor. Chips scattered, drawing Morales' attention for a split second. In that heartbeat, Alvarez fired. The bullet tore through Morales' shoulder, spinning him backward. Delgado wrenched free, collapsing to the ground, clutching the ledger. Morales staggered, blood blooming across his perfect white suit, his fury burning hotter than ever. "You're dead, Alvarez," he spat. "This city will eat you alive." The escapo virus grabbed Delgado by the arm, yanking him toward the shattered lobby doors. They stumbled into the neon-lit chaos outside, smoke billowing from burning cars, sirens screaming closer behind them. Morales' soldiers regrouped, dragging their wounded boss in to cover his eyes, locked on Alvarez through the haze, promising vengeance. The detective didn't look back. She shoved Delgado into the back of a police cruiser, abandoned in the street, slid behind the wheel, and slammed. The gas tires screeched as they sped off the strip, vanishing into the dark desert highway. For now, they had survived, but the war for Las Vegas was far from over. Las Vegas woke up to smoke. The neon strip, normally a shrine to illusion, looked like a war zone. Burned out cars smoldered near the golden oasis. Casino windows were shattered, bullet holes stitched across marble facades. Pools of blood stained the sidewalks. Tourists usually lined up on 4 photos by dawn. The headlines were already global. Shootout turns Las Vegas Strip into battleground. Dozens dead in casino violence, cartel suspected mob war, or terror attack. Officials hesitate to speak, and in the middle of it all, Detective Maria Alvarez sat in a safe house on the edge of the desert, bruised and exhausted. The master ledger spread across a table before her. The ledger secrets. Raymond Delgado hunched over the binder, his fingers trembling as he turned the pages. Each sheet was worse than the last. Coded transfers, false casino payouts, shell companies laundering billions, and the names not just Morales lieutenants, not just mob bosses, but judges, state senators, casino owners, bank executives, even a retired police commissioner. Delgado muttered, his voice cracking. "This isn't a ledger, it's a death sentence for you. For me, for anyone who reads it." Alvarez stared at the pages, her jaw tight. She knew he wasn't wrong. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a bomb. One that could take down half the city, if it went off. The FBI moves in by mid. Black SUVs lined the strip. The FBI had arrived, seizing control from the overwhelmed LVPD agents in windbreakers taped off crime scenes, interviewed shell-shocked tourists, and loaded body bags into ambulances. Special Agent Daniel Kruger, head of the Las Vegas field office, stood at the center of the chaos, barking orders. He had the kind of presence that made people snap to attention. Broad-shouldered, silver-haired, his expression carved from granite. When Alvarez finally emerged from hiding to meet him, Delgado at her side, Kruger didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You're a goddamn liability, detective," he growled. "Half the strip looks like Baghdad because you thought you could play hero." Alvarez shot back, voice sharp despite her exhaustion. I didn't start this war, Morales did, and I've got the evidence that proves he owns this city. She slapped the ledger onto the hood of his SUV. Here's your smoking gun. Kruger didn't even open it. He stared at her, eyes cold. You have no idea what you've just handed me. Doubt later, in the safe house. Delgado paced the floor like a caged animal. You saw his face. Kruger didn't even want to touch the ledger. You think he's clean? You think he isn't one of the names inside? Alvarez rubbed her temples, exhausted. If he is, then Morales just got stronger. If he isn't, then maybe we finally have a chance to bring this city back from the dead. But, even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. She had seen too many crooked cops. Too many bought judges. For all she knew, Kruger was flipping through that ledger right now, deciding which pages to burn. Morales strikes back as night fell. The city tried to pretend it was normal again. The Strip's lights flickered back on. Casinos reopened their doors, and gamblers returned to the tables, desperate to forget the blood that had stained the streets only hours before. But Morales wasn't finished. Across the city, coordinated attacks erupted. A state senator's office was bombed. A police evidence locker went up in flames. A casino executive was found hanging in his penthouse, a message carved into his chest. No one leaves the table. The message was clear. Morales didn't fear exposure. He embraced chaos. He thrived in it. Alvarez's result. Alvarez stood on the balcony of the safe house, staring at the endless desert night. Delgado sat inside, head in his hands, muttering about how they were already dead men walking. But Alvarez wasn't done. Morales thinks he owns this city, she whispered to herself, but Vegas doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the people who built it, the dealers, the waitresses, the ones who don't get a choice. She tightened her grip on her pistol for the first time. Her fear hardened into something sharper. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about finishing the war. Vega died fighting the same. Felt smaller with each passing hour. Alvarez hadn't slept. Delgado hadn't stopped pacing. The master ledger sat on the table between them, like a cursed object, humming with the weight of too many secrets. Every time Alvarez looked at it, she thought of the names inside: judges, casino politicians, and the image of Special Agent Kruger refusing to open it, replayed in her head like a broken slot machine. Why didn't he even want to see it? The unease that had started as a whisper now screamed in her gut. The FBI wasn't her salvation. It was compromised. Delgado's panic. Delgado stopped pacing long enough to collapse into a chair. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette, sweat dripping down his temples. You don't get it, Maria, he rasped. You think Morales runs the cartel? He's just the face, the real power. The people in that book, they're the ones who built this city. Morales is just their muscle. He took a drag, exhaling shakily. You think the feds want justice? They'll bury that ledger before they ever put Morales in chains. Alvarez didn't answer. She stared at the desert skyline, the strip glowing faintly in the distance, and felt the truth closing in. Delgado was right to call her. Burner phone buzzed. She snatched it up, expecting one of her few remaining allies instead. Special Agent Kruger's voice filled her ear, calm, cold. Detective Alvarez, you've been busy. Her grip tightened. Where's Morales? Kruger chuckled, still breathing, still richer than God. But don't worry about him. You should worry about yourself. I know where you are, and if you want to survive the night, you'll hand over Delgado and the ledger. Her stomach dropped. You're working for him. Not for him, Kruger corrected smoothly. For the city, for the people who matter. Morales is useful, you're reckless. So here's your choice. Give me the book, and maybe I let you walk away, or I send every badge in Nevada to your doorstep. The line went dead. Nowhere left to run. Delgado's face went gray. He knows where we are. We're done. It's over. Alvarez slammed her fist on the table. No, it's not over until Morales is in the ground. We can't trust the feds. We can't trust the cops. That leaves us. Delgado stared at her, horror mixing with admiration. You're insane. You're talking about going after him directly. Damn right I am. she said. No more hiding, no more waiting for backup that'll never come. We end this on our terms. Planning the storm, Alvarez spread the ledger out, flipping to the section that detailed Morales' finances. Offshore accounts, casino fronts, even private security rosters there, she said, stabbing a finger at one page. His stronghold, the Silver Serpent Club. It's where he launders his cash, throws his parties, keeps his men fat and loyal if we hit him there. We cut off his throne. Delgado shook his head violently. That place is a fortress. Cameras, guards, VIPs. You won't even make it past the front door. Alvarez holstered her gun, her eyes burning with resolve. Then I won't use the front door. Morales countermove as if on cue. The sound of engines filled the desert air. Delgado froze, cigarette trembling in his fingers. Alvarez peeked through the blind's headlights. Dozens of them, cutting across the sand. SUVs, armed men pouring out like ants from a hive. Morales wasn't waiting anymore. He had come for them. The escape gunfire ripped through the safe house windows. Alvarez dragged Delgado down, shielding him as splinters flew. She returned fire, dropping 2 silhouettes in the sand, but there were too many. They bolted through the back, racing into the desert. Night bullets chased them, dirt exploding at their heels. Delgado stumbled, clutching the ledger to his chest like it was fused to his body. Alvarez pulled him up, adrenaline drowning out exhaustion ahead. The faint glow of an old junkyard shimmered in the dark, rusted cars. Twisted metal, a graveyard of machines. Move, she hissed. They dove into the shadows as Morales' men closed in. Alvarez's vow, breathing hard. Alvarez crouched behind the shell of a burned-out truck. Delgado lay beside her, wheezing, his knuckles white around the ledger. This ends tonight, Alvarez whispered, her voice steady. Despite the chaos, Morales wants a war. I'll give him one, but I'm not playing defense anymore. She chambered her last full magazine, her eyes fixed on the neon glow of the strip. Far in the distance. Tomorrow, she said, almost to herself, I take the fight to his house. And that brings us to the end of today's chapter in Las Vegas Crime Stories, a city built on neon dreams, but haunted by shadows of corruption, betrayal, and blood. As Alvarez edges closer to her final confrontation with Morales, one truth remains: in Las Vegas, the house always wins. Until someone's brave enough to flip the table. If you've been following along, make sure to hit that like button, share this with a true crime fan, and subscribe so you don't miss the explosive final chapters. Until next time, stay safe and keep listening to the whispers of crime.